There is a broad vein of escapism in board games. It's escapism of a particular stripe too. It's the kind of escapism that's always apparent but blossoms into its full splendour as you get older. There are many paths you can take to reach escape. There's the chemical, ferment a grain or synthesise a molecule, insert it into your body and float away from this world. There's escape in the creations of others, their fantastical worlds that often contain good and evil rather than the messy moral soup that makes up most of our interactions. Then there's what I'm talking about here, fleeing into the past. Escapism through nostalgia. The human mind has the wonderful habit of knocking the rough edges off experience as it squirrels it away into the filing cabinets of memory. It cuts out the waiting, the going to the bog, the petty frustrations that are so ubiquitous in life lived moment to moment, and it offers up a melange of pictures, feelings and synaptic interactions that often feel better in the recollection than the actual experiencing. Board games offer this. They are willfully anachronistic, shunning the silicon tyranny of today's always-on world. You have to unpack them, set them up, wrangle with the rules ambiguities. They are nothing like the seamless sheen of Apple products. Board games feel like they've been fashioned by people, not robots, whether that is true or not. They make us feel connected to a former time that felt less automated, less digital and less alienating. They tap us into a time when the world was exciting discovery for us, not just another disappointment. They tap us into the past, and that is incredibly attractive, especially when your thoughts turn to former glories. This is not some morbid fugue about the inevitability of death either. It's just as years pile up, there is more opportunity to fail. Fail you will. Games are a route back to a place that never existed, and yet it is wonderful for us to pretend that it did. Chu Han from Grail Games and car design legend Tom Lehman is like nostalgia on steroids for me, because Chu Han is a ladder climbing game. I have spent a life eager to avoid work. The propensity was especially evident when I was a student. I busied myself trying to find ways to fill the endless hours of the day with anything that wasn't the subjects I was studying. A lot of these hours were filled with card games, never poker though. Poker is shite if you don't have any money, and then, as now, I resolutely didn't have any. No, I played ladder climbing games for hours, endless hours sat around a table of shithead or a game we called Indonesian poker that I can find no reference to on the internet. Salting hands and playing sets, sighing at the kick in the mandibles that fate had given me this time. It all felt so natural to me at the time, sharing these folk inventions, a connection to a shared culture that can seem so alien in most of everyday life. That's why card games and their survival is important. They are cultural breadcrumbs that those before us left out to lead us to the cottage in the woods that holds a shared humanity that is divorced from the distractions and fripperies of today. We must move forward, but we must take some things with us, and the thought of the same neural pathways being fired off in a teenager today that were fired off in a teenager 200 years ago by the same arrangement of symbols and numbers is comforting. It implies a continuity, a sense that not everything we do in the time given us is futile, that in an exceedingly metaphorical manner we live on. That's why, when Tom Lehman announced that he was releasing a new ladder climbing game set in the Han Dynasty, I knew I had to snag a copy and give it a go. I'd be betraying 18-year-old me if I didn't. Chu Han is a wonderful game that pulled up many fond memories from the cellar of my mind while playing it. It is no mere exercise in nostalgia though. It's also a bloody good game. Chu Han screams classic from the first second you shuffle the cards. The way sets of cards are played, the way you spend 2 minutes at the beginning of every round sorting your hands into glanceable chunks. The way you always say, well, this is shit when you fan out your hand for the first time. There is a comfortable familiarity to the core structure of this game that lets you know what it is from the off. There would be little point in the thing existing though if it was just another facsimile of a ladder climbing game. These kinds of games are judged on the new things they slap onto the table, how they differentiate themselves from their predecessors. I mean, why play this one when so many brilliant games have come before? Well, let's explore that. Chu Han is a two-player ladder climbing game set in the Han Dynasty where you're seeking to gain supremacy over your rival. You'll have to learn this from the rulebook though, as there is absolutely no theme here. This is a good ladder climbing game. It is not a rigorous examination of ancient Chinese internecine strife, even if the pictures are quite nice. We play sets of cards to the table and our opponent has to play the same number of cards but of a higher number. Play continues like this until one player passes and the person who played the last set starts again, dictating the number of cards that need to be played. When a player is out of cards, they score points depending on the number of cards their opponent still has left in their hand. 3s and 6s have special powers and 2s score a point for every 2 played in a set if you play 6 or over. Writs can be taken to allow players to draw 2 cards into their hand to help them make bigger sets, though you carry the risk of making it much more difficult to get rid of all of your cards. Events are drawn at the beginning of every round that will affect that round in certain ways. When a player reaches 31 points, the game ends, and that player is the winner of Chu Han. Of this game is wonderful. The art, the tokens and the scoreboard all betray an attention to detail and care in this game. Now if it turns out that the art in this is AI and I can't tell the difference, then well done robots, you got me. Also, the game comes with a tuck box and printed cards that make it totally playable from that tuck box. An unnecessary addition, but one that lets you know that the publisher wants you to play this. They want you to throw it in your bag and pull it out when you have a spare half an hour. This implies a faith on their behalf in this game, and they are right too to have that faith, because this is a cracker. Tom Lehman has made a legitimate entry in the ladder climbing canon with this one. Firstly, he's fashioned a ladder climbing game, traditionally a multiplayer genre, into a fast, tense and hugely enjoyable 2-player game. This has been a trend in recent years, trying to fashion traditionally multiplayer games into viable 2-player games. Many of the 2-player trick takers I've tried have lacked the vitality that their multiplayer cousins possess. Chu Han works brilliantly in this regard. There is all of the tension, the back and forth and the exasperation and joy of a ladder climber, but with just a couple of you staring each other down. The powers here are great, offering loads of options when you reveal them in your hand. They do a lot. You can double the amount of points that are awarded this round, but that goes for your opponent as well as you, so if you play that card, you better be bloody sure you can win. You can snaffle the lead and steamroll at the hand, you could play sets of different numbers, and one just lets you discard a card. The powers aren't game-breaking, but offer you a route to getting rid of all your bloody cards in your hand. Each hand in a card-shedding game has to be navigated, and these powers are vital beacons leading you to your destination. They also make you feel bloody good when you play them because they have an effect on the game. They are not merely cosmetic, but part of the structure. What I most loved about Chu Han is its avoidance of the postmodern. This is not a Derrida-infused sneer at the traditional. What cleverness there is, and there is plenty, is not there to elevate the profile of the designer, but to serve the game. The same cannot be said of the previous couple of sentences. This shows respect to the genre of ladder climbing and enhances it. It doesn't deconstruct it, but shores it up, making it stronger. Playing this felt like climbing into the cringe trench coat I wore for most of my teenage years again. It was also comfortably familiar and new simultaneously. Chu Han made me feel a connection from this idiot adult to that idiot youth. It was all muscle memory and ingrained heuristics. It was engaging and rewarding. You feel the pang of wasting time as you get older because your knees remind you that time is finite. But Chu Han took me back to a time when wasting time didn't have such high stakes, and I revelled in it. I really enjoyed Chu Han, And if you're anything like me, pray that you're not, you will too. Thanks for watching. You can like the video if you liked the video, you can sub to the channel. Down below you'll find a link to the best Discord in gaming and to my merch store where there's loads of cool stuff. You can even help to make these videos by going to patreon.com/5G4D and backing the show, like these lovely people. Right, I'm off to dye my beard, turn up in utero really loud and pretend I'm young again.